Thanks for joining us. We're going to take a look over the next few minutes at TimeControl Industrial. HMS Software first released TimeControl in 1994, and in 1999, 5 years later, released this edition of TimeControl designed for situations where people could not enter their own timesheets at their desk, but would have their timesheets entered for them by a foreman or a shift supervisor in construction or engineering or shutdowns or outside of the office. And that's what we're going to look at today. TimeControl Industrial and TimeControl are designed to be multi-function timesheets. So the same system can be used for payroll, for human resources. It can be used for billing, for finance, for job costing. We can use it to advance project management systems with the actuals that come from the field, and for field data collection where people are not going to have access to a timesheet. Their timesheet can be entered for them from a supervisor right at the field who can update that information. Okay, enough talking about it. Let's take a look at TimeControl itself here over the next few minutes. Okay, I've logged into TimeControl Industrial now, and we've logged in as a person who enters timesheets on behalf of someone else. Now we're looking at the web interface as opposed to the mobile interface, but you can see that Diana Jacob, who is in the system, has a dashboard. Dashboards can be adjusted to suit whatever this person might need to see, and Diana could even select a dashboard if that was something that was available to her. Now we're not going to cover all the functionality of TimeControl. I encourage you, if you're interested in all the other functionality that's included in TimeControl, to look at the regular TimeControl demo. We're really going to focus on what is available for TimeControl Industrial, and I'll start that by talking about the crew labor entry. So this is a crew timesheet. You can see in the list that we would see things that are in draft, released, rejected, posted. We're going to add a new timesheet, and while Diana may work in weeks, if she's going to add time, say, for the Joe Garner crew, they can work on a daily timesheet. So you can select what durations, what periods a timesheet should be available for. You could do multiple timesheets in a day on different shifts. In this case, we're going to add one timesheet for the 11th. That seems to be the next date available. I could copy from yesterday's timesheet. I could say, don't worry about preloads, just create something blank. I'm going to say, look, just load up the timesheet by default. And what I see is a blank timesheet with a number of fields to add. Now I could add lines one at a time, but the power of the crew timesheet is being able to add a lot of data for the entire crew. This is the list of the people who are on Joe Garner's crew. And I can say, well, these people, except for the first four, did some work. They were working on the construction project, and they were working on shop drawings, and I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to say everyone but those first four did this for 8 hours in the day. And when I click OK, you'll see that I get a whole list of lines created. This allows a foreman or a supervisor, someone in the field, to add an awful lot of data for their people very, very quickly. And they can continue. We can go back and say, yeah, I'd like to now add only the first four people and say, well, they were working on some different things. Let me add in a charge code for them. They were working on on-site mobilization, installing temporary power, and they did that for 4 hours. And then when they were done with that, they went back and added in those four people, added in another 4 hours on back to mobilizing the site, on installing temporary water. Now you can see on the left-hand side we also have resource code. This is because TimeControl supports a specific kind of resource per line item. So I could have a person who fulfills multiple roles. They're a driver in the morning, a carpenter in the afternoon. They're an engineer in the morning, a project manager in the afternoon. So I can have that resource code be selected according to what that person is doing line item by line item. I'm going to just take the default because we don't need to go very far. You can see that we've now got a fairly long list of items that have gotten put together in just a minute or two. From here, we can also go to add materials. Now I can show materials separately, but I'm going to save this for now and say the only thing left to do, if we like the look of this, we could also be entering in estimate to complete, override, expected for Primavera, if that's what you're linked to. I mean, there's a number of choices here in terms of the estimate for progress. And I could even add per line item, I could add expenses. So if there's individual expenses for each of these lines, things that are not labor but also aren't equipment materials, then we could put that in here. For example, if there was a transport allowance or a meal allowance, I mean, that could be put directly in here. In this case, I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm done with all of this for the moment. I can just leave it, or I can release it. And when I release, in this case, it's going directly to posting. But the timesheet could, in fact, be released to an intermediate person for approval. And even after that, once it's posted, then we can do individual line item approvals using the project management approval. If I go back to the crew list, we're going to find that we have the item we had before, Joe Garner's site, and we also have this is the one that was from the 10th. And if I go back to the list, you can see we also have the draft that we just created with 120 hours. And so it's currently owned by Diana Jacobs. This one here owned by Posting. And we can add as many crews and as many people as we want. Crews can be on multiple people can be on multiple crews. So when I select a crew, I have some information on who's in the crew, which is fine. I can also say, well, what is going to be the period, the timesheet period? We picked the daily period, but you can see there's also weekly timesheets and other kinds of periods that may be of use. How do we want to filter that data? We can control that. We can control defaults, like what project might this crew be working on, so that I don't have to go in and enter it every time. And even put in user-defined fields that can be very important for another part of time control called extended rates. The same thing goes for materials. This crew could add material information, be filtered there, and have user-defined fields for that info. So we can have as many crews as we want. We can have people be in multiple crews. Crews can have start-finish dates. We can filter all of that kind of information as we go. Let me take a look at the same kind of conversation when we talk about materials. In materials, we have a material entry screen that looks very similar to what we just saw for labor, but it's not for labor at all. It allows us to add for a charge code, for a project, the resource code, and I can add a line here to say, pick my, pick my project, pick a charge code from a hierarchical list. There's no limit to how big the hierarchy might be. I might say site grading and clear the site. And we're going to use some equipment for that. We're going to use a dozer, and we're going to be on the standard rate code. We can be on multiple rate codes or a rate code per thing. And I'm going to say, well, we did 8 hours of that, and it costs us, $40 an hour. So when I save that, we are adding material lines, and we can have as many of these entries as we want. This too can be sent for approval elsewhere. So once we've applied that information, I can say, well, now it's going to be sent to Chris Peters, and he is going to be able to look at that information, and he's going to be able to either reject or accept. I could even have a path where a client approves the consumption of materials or the use of equipment. All of that can be put in here. So we have both the labor side on crew entry, and we have we call it materials entry, but that counts for material and for equipment. In this screen, you could also add progress. I mean, aside from estimate to complete, which is more of a duration conversation, you could say number of cubic yards moved of material, or number of feet of pipe laid. All of that could be put straight into the materials. This is really our non-labor entry. From here, we also have all the configuration for that and material codes. I'd like to go out of here from Diana Jacobs now and go back to being an administrator. because Diana Jacobs really is about putting the data in, making sure it's correct, making sure it does what it needs to do. There's an area in time control, I'm just going to show it in the setup, where we can set up how rates work. When we look at rates, we can have something called extended rates. And extended rates allows us to pick user-defined fields or other fields that are available to the timesheet line, and use those to determine what a rate should be for that line. For example, I could have a field called shift, and day shift and night shift might have different premiums. I might have weather. Inclement weather might have a certain premium. I might have location. Different locations might have a certain premium, as well as a base rate, which allows us to create for each person, each project, each charge, each line for different conditions, different values. And time control can do all of that by saying what will those lines be. They can be drop-down values, so I can select from a choice, or they can be write-in values, although drop-down values typically more common, and they can just be yes, no's. Was this bad weather? Yes or no? And you can have all of that then become entries for the extended rates. And the extended rates table is just a very long list of give me all those options and show me the value for all those options. So that can be specific to a person, if that was the case, or to a resource type. Also, this allows us to do escalated rates. So rates that maybe change on the first of the year, or at the end of a contract time, or at the beginning of the winter season. All of that can be affected directly here inside extended rates. We aren't really going to talk about links, but the links to and from time control are a powerful aspect of the product. And project imports and exports for products like Primavera or Aries Prism or Innate's Hard Dollar. These are all in the construction, heavy construction and procurement type of projects. These are important aspects of time control, but they're discussed more commonly in our regular time control demo. I would like to talk about reports for a moment. There's a couple of ways to look at reports. One of the things is to be able to see a missing timesheet report or a missing crew report. If I was expecting a timesheet from each crew, I'd like to say, well, is there any crew that didn't put theirs in? For an administrator, this can be a huge time saving because you can determine where are we missing data that I need to go get it. Who maybe doesn't have access to the internet and can't get their timesheet in. Now, aside from that, we can also start looking at data. One of the most popular tools for administrators is called the drill down analyzer. It allows us to load any number of fields. In this case, we're going to be loading it from posted timesheets. I can filter the data to take maybe only a certain project or only a certain time, and then I get a reasonably uninspiring list of data. But if I just drag a field like the project name up to the grouping bar, very much like a pivot table, suddenly I'm looking at everything grouped by project. If I then say, yeah, I'd also like to group that then by charge, now I'm looking at things grouped in two different levels. And if I say, well, and then by employee, I can see things that are grouped at multiple levels from there. If I drop down to, say, the, Polar project, you can see that I have a certain number of hours, I have a certain number of charges, who worked on those charges. I can see Gail worked on that one, or I can just say expand all of it, I want to see the whole thing. From here, for people who like this kind of view, who find it powerful, you can export that data directly to Excel for further analysis. But administrators look at this tool, the drill down analyzer, and say, I can answer those questions that I always have to answer extremely quickly. Being able to take a look in here and find out what we need to do to answer our data request. The second thing here is our standard report list, and that can be as many reports as you wish. You can take our default reports or add your own. Some reports are, look more like this is an invoice view. So that might be something for, say, subcontractor invoicing, where we take a look at data and over, say, last month for a particular project, and it compiles through that list and then gives us, something in a format that we desire. Just let that load up for us as it goes through an awful lot of data. And then other reports will be more, let's take a look at that one. Other reports will be either tabular or graphical, and you can mix and match. Okay, so here's a pretty simple invoice report. Went through very little data in the end, or a lot of data to end up with a very small report. But that is a view, and this is one of 20 pages of this report, including the details. So, I mean, that's one type of report. But then here, let's take a look at something maybe a bit more common. I'll just load it here. Well, now I'm looking at data that includes per person, per project, along with a bar chart already loaded into that report, and that's a 5-page report of this kind of data. So the reporting capabilities of TimeControl are quite strong. Also, if that's not enough, access to TimeControl, whether it's in the subscription system, TimeControl Industrial Online, or on-premise for TimeControl Industrial, access to that data can be accomplished through an API, and also through things like through external reporting systems like Power BI and other kinds of tools like that. So, TimeControl Industrial, it's a really quick overview. The key features I think we are talking about in as we go through the next few slides, but also we've shown it to you now in on the web screen. Let's see how else we can take a look at that same data.
Okay, we saw time control in action. We only looked at the web version, however, and there's a lot of other ways to look at time control, including the mobile app. Included with time control Industrial is a mobile app that works in iOS or Android systems. This is a screen from the tablet, although you could also be using your phone. This allows people to work right at the job site to enter in this case we're looking at a crew entry. Or enter in materials and material entry right from the field. Whether you're using the phone or a tablet, a supervisor can be walking around the site and entering data or doing approvals right where the work is happening. So the TimeControl mobile app is an interesting addition to TimeControl that is included in TimeControl licenses. There's no cost for adding interface through the app. We talked about approvals, but the workflow is extremely flexible in TimeControl Industrial. We bring our information in from the data collection, whether that's done through the mobile app or through the website, and then we go through crew sheet approvals. We use the automated validation rules at the crew level. We can do additional manual levels of approval, including, for example, we could have an approval level that happens first from the field supervisor and then has an approval from the client still in the field before it comes back to the office. So all of these kinds of paths of approval can be worked into TimeControl through what we call the matrix approval process for actuals. Now we looked at crew approvals. Material approvals is the same, although it can follow a different path. Same thing for equipment, and the same thing for production accomplished to make sure that the right people are able to enter the right information. Then once that data has been approved, it can go on to the project manager can validate and send that information back to the project management system, such as Primavera or Microsoft or whatever that system is, and at the same time go back to the ERP, whether that's SAP or Oracle or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever that system is. There's an awful lot of features that we haven't shown you, and it's tough to do in the amount of time that we have. TimeControl is extremely flexible and available both as an on-premise deployment where we would sell a license, or as a subscription where we manage the system in the cloud. Aside from the entries for the crew and for the material, there's also all of the functionality that comes with TimeControl itself. And that includes being able to track expenses, being able to do matrix approvals for people who work at desks, being able to do things like bank time or vacation requests, and a wide range of reporting options. TimeControl includes numerous links to project management systems, including Microsoft's suite of project tools, Oracle's Primavera EPPM, and a variety of others. Estimating tools like Ares Prism and Hard Dollar from Innate are also supported. For people who are having to do work for the Defense Contract Audit Agency or where you have to be compliant with those rules, TimeControl complies with that also. Timesheet approvals is an area which is often a challenge for people deploying timesheets, and HMS has something unique called the matrix approval process for labor actuals. This is something where you can find on our website a whole site dedicated to the conversation of approvals, including a white paper on how to write your or configure your approval process. Automated validation rules allow us to create rules for when a timesheet is acceptable and when not before we even get to a manual approval of a timesheet, and those rules can include almost anything. And additional validations can be done at the manual level as well. For non-labor approvals, such as equipment or material consumption or production accomplished, there are approval paths for that also. And we can determine that being entered directly on the timesheet at the same time as labor, or they can be entered separately. We haven't talked a whole lot about rates, but the rates structure in time control is as flexible as everything else that we've talked about. They include rates per role, per person, per project. You can have an unlimited number of rates per person and even escalated rates. And TimeControl Industrial includes something called extended rates for both labor and non-labor entries. Labor, of course, being people, and non-labor being material or equipment or production. And those rates allow us to create a series of checkboxes on a line item in a crew timesheet, where we say, well, here's the shift or the weather or the risk of doing that work, and that can affect the rate premiums for that person. And all of that can be entered in the field either on the website or on the mobile app. The Time Control mobile app is free. It's available for download from the Google Play or from the Apple Store. And the app is a responsive design, so it adjusts to whatever the size of screen is that's available to it. One of the most powerful things about Time Control Industrial is the number of ways that it can integrate with other elements in the company, whether that's SAP or Oracle or project tools like Primavera, EPPM, or Primavera Pro. And so Time Control has many of these links already built in. Others where the link can be configured as needed when you look at the system. Our clients are from all over the world. You may recognize some of them. This is not a complete list, but Time Control and Time Control Industrial's clients represent a wide range of industries, of people who you need to get their actuals in to many places at the same time from a single source. And we are working in a wide range of industries with Time Control and Time Control Industrial, whether it's manufacturing or defense or utilities. Regardless of what the requirement is, Time Control has been able to adjust to those needs. If you need more information on Time Control Industrial, I encourage you to go to the website at industrial.timecontrol.com, or you can try Time Control for free at our free trial site, or contact us at info@hms.ca. We'd be happy to set up a presentation or a demonstration so you can find out more about this product.